Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, September 8th. This is the Spartan speaking. Hope you all have a great end to the week. Hope you had a great week. And I hope we're 1 week closer to the end of this conflict. Let's go over the last 24 hours worth of losses, military losses for the Russians, and then we'll cover off a few other items and finish off with something a little bit lighter. So the interesting thing was there wasn't a ton of sort of intense combat footage coming out from the last 24 hours that would lead you to believe that there was a lot of losses. I mean, there's always a lot of losses, but you know what I mean. It's relative. Um, I was expecting today's loss report to be low, like in the 400s for Russian infantry, military personnel, and maybe a lower amount of of hardware. And lo and behold, it turns out, what do I know? It's one of the more um, costly days for the Russians in recent memory. Um, so the to go over the losses of the last 24 hours, 640 troops, which is on the higher side. I mean, it's not the thousand, but I think we saw 1,050 or 1,090 is the top end. I think we've seen like 390, 350, 390 in the low end. So 640 is, and again, these are people. Unfortunately, they're bad people doing bad things, but at the end of the day, they are people. But that's 640 less people that are going to be trying to kill, wound, maim Ukrainians. 23 tanks. I don't recall the last time I've seen 23 tanks taken out. I'm going to look around for footage I mean, I've seen a few. Saw a couple of really good takeouts, like one shot and not a cook off, like one shot, like small nuclear explosion when these tanks were hit. I don't know if it's bad luck for them, but I saw two in a row where it almost looks like there was a new type of munition being used, where basically it was penetrating and not just cooking off the first shell that it came in contact with, but basically igniting all the shells at once and turning the tank into just a mushroom cloud. So I'm not, and as far as the number, I mean, if anybody's been following this war for the last week, let alone month, a year and a half, you'll know that there are, you know, 4 tanks, 5 tanks, 6 tanks in a day is a pretty good day for the Ukrainians. That means they've advanced. They've found some tanks out in the open, that sort of thing. 23 is unheard of. So we'll see if that trend continues. It would maybe lead me to believe that the Ukrainians have advanced into some sort of fixed fortifications where maybe some of those old T-30s, T-60s, etc., were being used as kind of bunkered and not pillbox and placed artillery systems as opposed to mobile tanks, and maybe they're being caught. They're being sort of run over, spotted and run over by the Ukrainians. We'll see. 23 APVs, armored personnel vehicles. That's sort of in and around the norm. 31 artillery systems. I just have run out of superlatives and descriptors, and yes, I've seen, and again, I haven't seen 31 video clips from the last 24 hours, but definitely see enough video clips to let us know that the 31 is probably in the wheelhouse of being correct. One MLRS, one anti-aircraft warfare system. We'll cover off that. That's a book, bye-bye book, and 29 UAVs. In addition, there was something else too. No, I think that was it. Yeah. So overall, the Russian losses, military losses, approaching $83 billion. That's insane. $83 billion in man material. Um, so moving on, just want to cover off the deep state, Matt, real quick. I wanted to kind of touch on something. So first of all, over the last 24 hours, deep state has the very minimal movement. Um, Once a Ukrainian territory has been confirmed, Ukrainian recaptured land has been confirmed, it's moved to blue. Once it's been held for longer than 2 weeks straight, it's moved to green, I believe is the way it works. And these are the fortifications. So as you've probably heard, these are the Sirovikin fortifications. And a little sidebar, if you think about the people that maybe were the most either successful, credible, etc., for the Russian military, you could say Girkin, because it was military past and helping to actually take over the Donbass in 2014. You can talk about Sirovikin, who successfully, he was put in charge and successfully vacated a large amount of military men and equipment from the right bank of the Kherson Oblast, prior to them getting trapped over there and basically, captured or slaughtered or whatever. And he also started mandated the construction of the Sirovikin line, which was anti-tank and anti-personnel minefields that have never been seen before in history. Anti-tank ditches and basically pillboxes, ATGM emplacements, etc. So he basically is responsible for these fortifications because he learned after the Kharkiv Oblast embarrassment, that you can't just load all your troops up in the front and have no defense in depth, nothing behind you. And so he basically started construction of these 1 to 3 layers of fortification. Oh yeah, Dragon's Teeth as well. Didn't mention them. They're useless unless there's cover fire to slow something down so that an ATGM can take out a tank or whatever. But the Dragon's Teeth are just yet another pain, right? But so Sirovikin basically said that's not going to happen again, even though we plan on holding the front line all across the occupied territories. We're going to make 1, 2, 3 trench networks deep, 10, 15, 20, 30 kilometers behind the front lines, so that we can slow any enemy advance and bring in reinforcements, etc. So that's what these networks are. So over the last 24 hours, you can see really just one movement, and it's not really a movement, it's just basically confirming that the Ukrainians held this territory long enough to move it to blue. It's confirmed. And in a week or so, this blue will all move to green, and hopefully we'll be looking at the Tokmak on the board or something on the picture. But what I wanted to, oh yeah, sorry, the last person, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. The last person who kind of made a positive impact on the Russian military effort was obviously Prigozhin and Wagner. Horrible person, horrible people, disgusting what they've done, but they were responsible for taking Soledar and Bakhmut. They were the last military unit of Russian persuasion that took any land anywhere. And yes, from the first time a shell landed on the outside of Bakhmut until the day that it officially fell, it was a year. And estimates range from 30 to 70,000 people lost their lives on the Russian side, taking that town of 70,000. Not your greatest military victory in history, but Prigozhin had success, whereas no one else in the Russian military has. So now if you look at it, Girkin's in jail, health is failing because he opened his mouth way too many times. Sirovikin basically was a friend of Prigozhin, and was basically, even for all the good that he did in the military. First of all, he was removed from his rank of like military commander in the Ukraine war, when he appeared to be too close and to Prigozhin and supplying him too much military equipment and information. And then after the coup attempt by Prigozhin, Sirovikin was removed from office, put on house arrest, and is now walking around in civvies. And Prigozhin, obviously, we know him and Utkin and the leadership of Wagner. Their plane had a special disassembly operation in the air, and so those three people, three groups, whatever, that had possibly the most positive impact for the Russians since 2014 are all out of the picture. Anyways, little sidebar. It's funny how no matter what you do well for Putin, if you do too well, your time is limited. If you open your mouth, your time is limited. He wants a bunch of yes men and acolytes, and that basically bodes well for the Ukrainians, because these yes men and acolytes don't tend to be military geniuses and don't tend to want to step outside of the norm. They don't want the light to shine on them. They just want to basically blend in with the pretty green uniforms. One thing I wanted to point out, what's terrifying if you're a Russian soldier who's been tasked with manning these trenches. So when you're manning, let's say this is like an anti-tank trench, or just a too deep personnel trench that's got, could have barbed wire, could have machine gun nests, could who knows what the exact makeup is, but you're basically told to hold that line. So let's say you're holding this line right here, and you're looking off in the distance, and there's nobody in front of you, or they're way off here to the northeast. That's fine. And as they start to approach, you can fire at them, and they'll fire at you, and you keep your head down. And once they get a little closer, you might be able to fall back to the second trench, but nobody's to your right, nobody's to your left, except for your battle buddies, right? In this case, I do not know how you would be able to, like, if you look here, and if you look here, and if you look here, I do not know how you would be able to man that trench or trenches effectively if you are standing right here as a Russian, and you're supposed to hold the line, and you're standing right in this trench right here, you can literally be attacked, obviously, anywhere from the front. You can have somebody flanking you from the side and coming from this direction. You can have somebody who's walking down this trench, in your trench, from your right. You can have somebody who's crossed the trench and is in the field over here and coming at you from your right. And very close to having somebody in the trench behind you. So you're expected to hold this trench, and meanwhile the Ukrainians could be jumping into this trench and making their way down and basically sandwiching you between Ukrainian forces here and themselves in this trench. So in my mind, you're going to want to be getting the hell out of Dodge the second that any of this is happening, and you're going to be moving down, booby trapping this, whatever, and moving west along this trench line, getting the hell out of there, because you cannot be surrounded on 3 sides and possibly 4 sides while holding a trench. It's literally impossible. And then the same thing kind of goes over here too. It's not quite as bad, but these trenches have been taken for quite a while. So clearly Ukrainians are in this trench. They're moving west to east. You're Russian, let's say you're on flat ground here and or in this trench. You're facing this way, and you've got people potentially to your right, you've got people in front of you, you've got people to your left. And if you're if you're supposed to be guarding this piece of land right here, that there's a good chance that the Ukrainians are in this trench, and they are moving to your left, and they've got better cover than you because they're in your old trench network. So that's why it was so critical for the Ukrainians to reach these extended Surovikin trench lines, because once you get into them, you expose the east, west, whatever flank. You add a new layer of complexity to defense, and you also give yourself more cover because you can then take over these trenches once you've made sure they're not booby trapped. Anyways, just something to keep an eye on. That's why I think the U.S., the Ukrainians, a lot of Western analysts, etc., NATO all believe that things are going to start to pick up a bit here because you've basically broken into the key infrastructure of the Russian defense forces, and they're repositioning a lot of. They're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. They're repositioning a lot of forces from other areas, and that's going to make those other areas weaker. If these Russian military emplacements are correct, then you've got some thin areas up here all around, and the Russians have basically said, "Okay, we'll buy your feint, or we'll react to what you're doing, and we'll put all of our troops in here." You know the Ukrainians are going to basically do an end around at some point if you keep on doing what they want you to do. Anyways, something to keep an eye on. This will be an interesting place to watch over the next little while. I'm really hoping that we, well, first of all, it'll be fascinating to see if the Ukrainians keep pushing southeast or if they're going to expand like a tree root and they're going to, start to move Nova Prokhomovka. Nope. No, not going to do it. If they start to move back this way again and expand, and if they can start to get behind these front lines, you're going to make these front lines want to vacate, and this salient will open up into just a wide front. Anyways, enough of that. Here is a mine clear that's been provided by Slovakia. That's the Bozena 5. And what's cool about this one, I believe it's in the same family as some of the other ones that I've seen, where it has a massive amount of blades on chains and they spin so fast and chew up so much ground that I've seen them actually disassemble anti-tank mines instead of setting them off, if that makes sense. So think about just chipping away at the edge of it, but super fast. And then it gets to the fuse and it basically destroys the fuse, and it's destroyed the body of the mine or half of the body of the mine by the time it gets to the fuse. And so the mines don't go off. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what this one does as well. You can watch. That thing is just chewing. You can see the spinning blades in there. It's not the greatest quality video, but anyways, and literally every field that was either occupied by the Russians or close to or could have been mined, they have to basically do every square foot of this so that some farmer down the road isn't driving along on his John Deere and hits one that you missed. Every single square piece of land has got to be demined. It's going to take decades. Sad to say, but decades. So we talked about the anti-aircraft warfare system, which was basically the book. This is a $40 million piece of equipment. It's got a range. I've seen there's different book variants. I believe this one, the 9A317M Telar, of the book M3 air defense system. Wow. I believe this one has a range of 2.5 kilometers to 70 kilometers. And why not less than 2.5, under 2.5 kilometers? Some systems, they don't have the ability to detect, track, fire, and arm their missiles. So some systems unfortunately have, not unfortunately in this case, but some systems can't. It's not like from 0 to 70 kilometers. You actually have to have a starting point when everything needs to be set up and launched and activated and that sort of thing. So tracked. So the book is a multi-vehicle system, and like I said, it's a $40 million system, and I'm thinking this is the tungsten HIMARS takeout, because it takes out one, and then you'll see the other one. It looks like it goes up without any extra missile, so it could be the tungsten pieces, fragments, and they're not tungsten ball bearing. They're fragments of metal of all different shapes and sizes. They're all sharp, but they fly fast. But I'm not sure if this is it or not, but it kind of looks like it is to me, and it looks like most of the impact was taken on the first book system that it hit, but that other pieces may have still flown across and hit additional pieces of the system. So it looks like there's at least 3 vehicles involved, but watch and see what you think. I should probably mute it. So there's the initial strike, and there's another vehicle over there. I'm going to rewind it again. See, watch this initial strike, and you can see how much extra destruction there is in the dirt around the system. It's pretty wide, and you can see some over there and over there. So that tells me that might have been the tungsten variant. I just call it the tungsten variant. And this one is now up, and the camera cut away. So I'm not 100% sure. That may have actually, now that I look at it a 4th and 5th time, that one may have been hit by a second strike as opposed to. And then here is the third piece that is in the corner of the field in the trees. And that is definitely a separate strike. So there's at least 2, probably 3 strikes. They are all, let's say it's all 3 are separate strikes. Pinpoint accuracy. No miss. One, boom, right on. You see the puffs around. And yeah, there's nothing, no smoke yet. So I'm going to say camera zooms in, and then boom, the other hit happens. Yeah, that's it. That is the second strike. And then we cut back over here to the corner. There's the last piece hidden. And that one, to me, it instantly, you get this spread over here, fragmentation. Like that fragmentation, this fragmentation over here, right? Puffs, right? Not much over here, but the body of the vehicle could be blocking anything over here. To me, this looks like one of those HIMARS tungsten rockets that basically takes out any type of light to medium armored vehicle, personnel, trenches, if it gets in the trench or close to it. Anyways, great takeout. One less air defense system, a very expensive $43 million air defense system. That's another video that I clipped in of that corner shot. Just so you can see what it looks like, this is the book M3 Viking NK317M. This is what one piece of the system looks like. There's your radar, and there's your 6 missile launchers. There's, I think it can be set up with additional launchers if I'm not incorrect, and a command and control vehicle as well. So we may have seen 2 launchers and a command and control vehicle taken out. It's really hard to tell what that setup was, but substantial loss and 70 kilometers of airspace that's no longer covered. I don't even know what to say anymore. The Russians have now started to put the tires on their freaking fighter planes. This is ridiculous. Like, your alert fighters are supposed to be able to take off in 3 minutes. This is an Su-34. Maybe it's not one of your alert fighters or whatever, but I can also tell you a couple 100 pounds of rubber is not supposed to be sitting on your ailerons. And if this thing needs to take off at a moment's notice or whatever, you got to send a crew of 4 or 5 guys to hop up there and take all the tires off and pray that you don't miss one. Like this one. What is that doing? Like, honest to God, if this is truly, if this is truly supposed to protect from drones, if I'm a drone operator, especially an FPV drone operator, I can hit that. I can hit the cockpit glass. These drone operators have been dropping drones into tank hatches. Well, a tank hatch and the center of a tire are basically the same size. So these FPV drone operators could easily figure out a way to still do damage. This is just it's for show, but it's an embarrassing show. I'm just embarrassed for them. I wanted to wish Kirill Budanov a happy birthday. He is the king of the trolls, wastes no chance to troll the Russians, and including using his birthday as a bit of a troll. So here we go. That's him ecstatically happy, by the way. Almost laughing uproariously. Second last piece, speaking of him trolling, so he got his actual cake, and it was a cake of the Russian Federation, and he's about to carve it up. I truly love this man. He is just hysterical. So good. I was going to show you the video on United 24 they did on him and his special forces units and the background that he had, but it's been shown by a bunch of people, so I'm not going to repeat it. But if you haven't seen it, maybe I'll link it in the video, but you should watch it. It's a great little video. Shows kind of a recap of all the big special forces operations over the last little while, from Crimea to taking out planes, and then it also talks about Budanov's history as well, when he was kind of in the special forces and he invaded Crimea as well. So the guy's got the receipts. He's been there, done that, and he's got a closet full of t-shirts. So he is the real deal. And the last thing I want to leave on another good note. It's nice to be able to, even though it's a horrible war, it's nice to have a couple of good notes to leave off on. Ukraine managed to return 9 more children. 2 of them were in the occupied territories, and 1 boy went through filtration camps, interrogations, and prison. The Russians accused him of blowing up a bridge. So he probably did not have a very good time of it at all. But 9 more children have been returned to Ukraine. Only 149,993 to go. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't have buzzkilled that. But anyways, progress is being made, and the more I've heard people ask how many prisoners should the Ukrainians take, and the answer is all of them. Because not only are you going to want to do 1-for-1 swaps with your own troops, getting them back, but the more Ukrainian troops that you're able to capture, the greater the chance that they might be used to get your children back as well down the road. So take every single prisoner you can. That's my message. I'm sure that's their thinking as well too. Anyways, that's it. Have a happy Friday. Tell someone you love them. Slava Ukraini.